Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John McGowan. I'm the director of the Institute for Arts and Humanities here on campus, and I'd like to invite you all to settle in. The great advantage of being the last panel of the day is there's no time limit at all. I understand the next thing on the schedule is at 2 o'clock tomorrow. So this last panel of the afternoon is about the question of the public research university. On our last panel, we were talking about metadata, and we had a group of exciting young faculty working on innovative projects here at the university. We're going to look at a meta question here in the last panel, which is the question of the public, I really want to emphasize that word public research university. At this time, in our current political and social climate, it's a little bit hard to make the case for both public education and for the research university. But we truly believe, and we think we've already shown you in the two panels before this one, how important the research mission of this university is. And so we want to have a final reflection here from this group of very distinguished faculty. We had the young faculty last session. We've got the graybeards this time. And they are going to, Jim's telling me I should speak for myself. I've got no hair at all, so I'm certainly not speaking for myself. But we do want to have a reflection, as I say, on the importance of and how to make the case for the public research university going forward. So our first speaker will be Kim Strom-Gottfried, and she's the Smith P. Theimann Distinguished Professor in the School of Social Work, and she is the director of the Academic Leadership Program at the Institute for Arts and Humanities, and her field of expertise is professional ethics, and she's particularly interested in working with nonprofits, as she does all across the country. She's a much valued leader of workshops, and she's particularly interested in professional ethics and questions of moral courage. So Kim, take it away.
Thanks, John. The 20 years that have passed since I got my doctorate in social work have all been spent at public research universities. I love them, and I cannot imagine spending my career anyplace else. Why do I love them? I love them because we have a great student bodies and diverse student bodies, socioeconomically and in all other capacities. We have fabulous faculty, hardworking faculty who set the bar, who make us, each of us, be better because of the work that we see going on around us. They create this culture of excellence. We have great opportunities for interdisciplinary work, and we also have not only the opportunity, but really the mandate, the mission to address vexing social problems and to bring our knowledge to bear and to study those very difficult issues, as you've heard about today. So I love this enterprise, but I worry about it. I felt like I'm starting out with a bit of a the cranky side of the street here, but I think we're in peril. And I'm going to just raise a couple of the data points, I think, that suggest some of that peril and the ways that our future, that we function on an increasingly narrow margin for our future. The last few years of budget cuts and flat salaries have detrimentally affected our capacity in publics across the country, in competition with privates, to recruit and retain outstanding faculty. The capacity to predict, to determine merit, and to reward it proactively has been diminished. And even though it's great to have funds to make retention offers, too often that is like closing the proverbial barn door after the faculty member has seen greener pastures in an offer elsewhere. And I want to say that that's true not just of faculty, but of staff, the people in IT and accounting and all the things that keep our engines running here in the classroom and in the laboratory. Being held in low esteem is also a recruitment and a retention challenge. The harsh political discourse of the last, seems like forever, but I'm sure it's only been a year and a half or so. But that discourse that devalues the work of the public university and fails to differentiate what makes it special from other very fine institutions of education is troubling, and it softens loyalty to the state and to the institution. Jim Duderstadt, who was, among other past roles, the president at Michigan, wrote a book talking about the future of higher education. He talks about just contrasting the roles of private boards of trustees of private universities to publics, and he says that the trustees in private institutions see themselves as champions and cheerleaders, and that too often, increasingly often, the trustees in private universities see themselves as overseers and gatekeepers and managers of the enterprise, and that, again, leads to sort of a feeling of being under siege. The recent government shutdown and other events. I'll just give an anecdote from our tiny School of Social Work, one of the smallest professional schools on campus. Lost $1.3 million in salaries last week because of federal money that flows through for training and research and student internships and other activities. And not to mention the loss of the economic engine that all of those displaced people are experiencing. And being situated in a public research university means that we're deeply interconnected with the social issues around us, and that affects our students in terms of the opportunities that they have, the temptations, the challenges, and those are going to increase, I would say, in the future. One of the conversations we had with our previous chancellor before he was leaving, in that conversation he shared that he had had to contact 22 parents to let them know that their children, students at Carolina, had passed away during his term as chancellor, 22 parents. And that's an outstanding figure for how sobering it is, but it's not an exceptional number by the statistics across campuses in the US. And what it tells me is there's so much more that we do and need to do for the people that study with us, and that's required of the public research university as we move forward in these complex times. And we need great leadership to chart this perilous course, and I'm so excited about the leadership that we're celebrating here on campus tomorrow. And I also want us to increasingly think about ways that we can encourage people who are outstanding teachers, researchers, people who've been successful in garnering grant funds, how we can encourage those people to look at administrative and leadership roles and not see them simply as accountability or other kinds of sort of policing roles, but opportunities to really think strategically and optimistically and creatively about the future in their departments. And so the ways that we can help encourage and cultivate new leadership will be important in charting for all of our stakeholders through the perilous times ahead. Thank you.
Our second speaker will be Maryann Feldman. She is the S.K. Heninger Distinguished Professor of Public Policy in the College of Arts and Sciences. And if I give you the title of one of Maryann's most recent books, it will give you a good sense of the work that she does. The title is Dynamic Geographies of Knowledge Creation and Innovation. So what Maryann studies are the conditions under which innovation becomes possible and prospers. So please welcome Maryann.
Great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's my pleasure to be at Carolina. And so given what I study, I am so excited to be here because I'm studying the Research Triangle Park and the industrial genesis of this state and the way that North Carolina was able to transform its economy. And so a lot of my work is really sort of historical and that gives me a perspective. I've really come to appreciate Carolina and a lot of the bold ideas, I think, that allowed this state to become what is arguably a leader that a lot of people look to when they think about higher education, technology-based economic development. I have been at private institutions for big chunks of my career, and it's exciting to be at a public institution because arguably we do the heavy lifting in the economy. We're responsible for education. We are much more engaged with our local and regional economies, and we really care about the prosperity of the places in which we're located. I often, when I am having a bad day, go to Hyde Hall and look at the boardroom where the charter for UNC is there. And I'm inspired because really the mission of UNC as a research university is to educate the rising generation to fully participate in public life. And that always just makes me feel so good about what it is that we do here. And I think that when we begin to think about teaching, increasingly teaching is about research, and research is about problem solving. This semester I'm teaching 2 courses. I teach in the minor in entrepreneurship, which is great fun, and I teach a PhD research seminar. And it occurs to me I'm teaching the same process. I'm teaching about recognizing a problem, describing that problem, turning that problem into an opportunity, garnering the resources you need, and then creating value, creating a solution, and then being able to act upon that. And so that makes it sort of very satisfying as an occupation. I think I probably have the best job in the world. When I look at UNC, also, it seems to me that it is so inspirational. It's really the inspiration behind the 1862 Morrill Act. And so this created land-grant institutions throughout the United States. And it was probably the most single event that accounted for economic development in the past 150 years. And so that really is, it was a bold idea, and it was experimented in North Carolina, having a public university, breaking that tradition of having education be secular or having it be vocational, and really making it something for the masses. And I'm also, when I think about things that are great about North Carolina, my study of the research triangle, and we now say we live in a knowledge economy. And early decisions made by North Carolina governors, Luther Hodges, when he decided that the Research Triangle Park was something that should be a public-private partnership when the private sector could not make that work, to step in and to really create this basis for technology-based economic development was a big dream, and it's something that was something that we've realized. And in my work, I benefit from these collaborations that you've heard so much about across campus, so that my work is aided by working with the Renaissance Computing Centers. They've helped me create a database that allows me to take a list of companies that was first compiled by a chemistry professor. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Bill Little. Can't believe I forgot that. I'm nervous for some reason. But Bill Little created this list, and I was able to work with him and to take his database using the resources from Renzi Computing to create this relational database. And we've also used the Odum Institute. We've been really aided by the Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, Andy Johns, who has helped us create a computer system that allows us to study the research triangle. Now that would be good, But this model has been picked up in my work with the U.S. Department of Commerce, where we are taking this model of studying a regional economy by studying firms and trying to now move it, as happened with the university, to a national model, to now a way of looking more integrally at economic activity. And so research universities and the sort of things that we produce become so critical for this new knowledge economy. And if you believe that, you would think that universities should be arguably the winners. Economic growth no longer depends on natural resources or on manufacturing, but it depends on knowledge, on the creativity of our ideas. And yet we see that increasingly our public research universities are under siege. And I sort of want to talk about two separate things that I think are really worrisome. And one is the cost of education. And what has happened is since the 1970s, we've really shifted paying for education from the public sector to now having individuals pay for their education educations. And the argument is, it's an economics argument, that individuals, by going to college, are making an investment in their human capital, and that they're going to realize those returns throughout their career. But the problem is that it's very difficult for 18-year-olds to make wise investments. It's very, very difficult, and many of them are left with debt. It breaks my heart when I meet with students and they talk to me about the multiple jobs that they're working in order to be able to stay in school. Students who have to turn down unpaid internships because they need to work for the summers to make their tuitions. And so as we have sort of declining support, it really has changed, and I think it creates a lot of uncertainty for us. I also want to sort of bring to your attention something that I think is also worrisome. I teach a large sophomore class, and I always go through, I'm an economist by training, so why do we have universities, and what are the reasons for government intervention in the economy? So we always say, well, market failures, and then one of the things we talk about is information asymmetries and the existence of moral hazard. So I've had students say to me, well, moral hazard is, well, when people shirk, and they have an incentive not to fully perform. So I had one young man say to me, this is an example of tenure. And it just seemed to me, well, wait a minute, and sort of, how many of you believe that? And we had a great discussion about this. And it seemed to me, as we want to rewrite the narrative of what we do at the university, that we can think of tenured professors as partners in law firms, partners in this intellectual endeavor that we are a part of. And so I think that we are at an exciting time. We think about now massive online open courses. And I think that, we've all had this experience of asking our students to read. And well, this generation doesn't like to read, but they do like to watch videos, and they do like to engage with computers. And it can make our classroom discussions much more exciting and much more interesting. And so, as a professor, as an educator, I think, I speak for many of us, we are the people who came to the university as young adults and never wanted to leave. Never wanted to leave because these are exciting environments in which to be. And when you teach, you learn from your students. And we are, I think, engaged in this community of scholars that makes this an exciting place. And so I hope that this wonderful enterprise is able to continue. Thank you.
And our last speaker is Jim Johnson from the Keenan-Flagler Business School, where he is the William R. Keenan Jr. Distinguished Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and also the director of the program in Urban Investment Strategies. If you have not had a chance to read the article about Jim's wonderful work in Durham with charter schools in the last Alumni magazine, I can only tell you that that's the thing you should do first before you arrive at the installation tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Jim Johnson.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a propitious moment in the history of this state, this region, our nation, and indeed the world. We're at a critical crossroads, geopolitically, economically, and demographically. We're living in an era of highly disruptive change. We're faced with a new normal that is characterized by three things: economic uncertainty, global insecurity, and turbulence, a state of affairs that I believe requires us to rethink the university's role in the state of North Carolina. For much of the past quarter century, North Carolina has been a magnet for both population and employment growth. Our state was perceived as one of the most attractive places in the nation to live and do business. But there are ominous signs that we're beginning to lose our competitive edge. The shine is off the apple, and both the national and international media have begun to question our attractiveness for future population and employment growth. And to a certain degree, the concerns are valid. 47 of our 100 counties lost population between 2010 and 2012. In 33 counties, the death rate exceeds the birth rate. Our obesity rate is unacceptably high, and we now know that one of the first data points a company looking to locate or relocate look at is the incidence of obesity in your local community. They use it as a surrogate measure for healthcare costs. We don't look very good. Our public schools struggle to equip young people with the requisite skills to gain admission to UNC Chapel Hill or other universities in the UNC system. And the 4-year success rate for the entering class of 2008 in our community colleges was 30%. That is, only 30% of the 2008 entering class had either earned as an associate degree or transferred to a 4-year institution by 2012. Given these serious challenges that we face, I firmly believe that this is an opportune time for UNC Chapel Hill as the flagship university to strategically reposition itself as the nonpartisan beacon light on the hill. That is, as the entity that mobilizes and leverages its enormous reservoir of intellectual assets and enlightened leadership to create a strategic roadmap for this state and to devise multiple pathways to prosperity for our fellow citizens in the highly volatile global economy of the 21st century. I firmly believe, ladies and gentlemen, we have to help our state in spite of itself. This will require us to move beyond the excellent basic and theoretical research we are known for and toward more applied, translational, and policy-relevant research. We must augment our efforts in entrepreneurship with place-based, people-based, and economic sector-based strategies that will propel our state forward in the years ahead. To do this will require, I suspect, a radical rethinking of what constitutes scholarly research and a fairly dramatic restructuring of the processes governing promotion and tenure in our university. We have never taken a back seat to any challenge in this state, and I don't see any reason for us to take a back seat now. When the tough gets going, the going gets going when the tough, you all got it.
Thank you to the panelists. With that call to action, we now actually have this group. See, these are practice teachers. They've left us room for questions and discussion. So we have some time. Comments, questions from the audience? Go right ahead in.
So I'll take the opportunity. We've, I think, justly, based on all the panels, prided ourselves for a long time on being either the very best of the truly public universities or the most public of the truly great universities. Given the peril, Dr. Strom-Gottfried, that you identified, are we going to have to choose between being truly great and truly public? And if so, what should we do?
Andy, I'm going to give you a demerit for that question. Just a little tiny. I will just, I'm certainly happy to share the answer with my colleagues. I've only been in North Carolina 14 years, and I don't, but I learned within 14 days that being truly public was a value held. You know, the Tar Heel bus tour, every stop from Murphy to Manteo made it really clear how much that's valued. So I think whatever strategies we're going to need to do, there are paths that have been followed by others, somewhat north of our border, that we're not going to follow. So I don't have the answer to how, but I think that's my sense of the value.
Oh, come on, Jim, I know you have an answer for that one. I know you have thoughts on that topic.
The two are highly correlated. I think at the end of the day, if we don't invest in our community, we can't be great. We are a university of the people of North Carolina, first and foremost. And the more we focus on creating the next generation of talent to propel this state, the better off we all are going to be. I don't see it as an option. I see it as a strategic and a propitious opportunity for us to stand up and show the world that you don't mess with us. Bush said don't mess with Texas. I'm saying don't mess with North Carolina. And we have to have that attitude, I think. I'm very serious about this. We can't sit on the sideline. We're in an incredibly volatile global economy, and we're in a war. And I'm not talking about the war on terrorism. I'm talking about the war to compete for talent, for foreign direct investment, and all other things that create a high quality of life for the citizens of this state. We have to eliminate the enormous inequality that we have. We're only as strong as our weakest link. You can get lulled to sleep in Chapel Hill.
Okay.
What do you all see as our greatest challenge, and how would you address it?
I'm yielding to my esteemed colleagues.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so the Chronicle of Higher Education reports right now that salaries at public universities are 25% lower than at privates. That's really significant. I've been here since 2008, and every year there's been cuts on top of cuts. And we're really operating right now at a bare bone budget, and I think it hurts the enterprise. And so I think that we need bold ideas to really be able to address this. You know, the idea of a public or great, and I think we need to be a great public. And we have had in North Carolina a history of bold ideas. And I think it's time now for more of those bold ideas.
Two of you have mentioned this idea of a new strategy of bold ideas. Where does that need to start, and where does it need to come from? I mean, it's sort of like you're throwing down a gauntlet to this group, but it sounds like it's an internal issue more than an external issue.
I don't think so. Internal to the university, but I think it's also external as we seek funding from the legislature, as we, sort of need taxpayers to support referendums that are going to be beneficial to us.
I mean, I think we're talking about investment in our future as a state, so I think one of the things Jim is talking about is investment in all of our young people and our whole education system from Head Start on up. So that's one issue. But another issue is I think we have to have innovative forms of public-private partnerships. We have to think about how the university can work with the business community as well. So those are the places we have work to do. I don't think going forward, we can't expect the legislature is going to be the one that's going to lead us in the ways that it has in the past, and that legislative funding, which we've enjoyed for so long, it's not coming back. So that's why we need new ideas. The old funding model is not going to continue. And to go to Maryann's point, we don't want to fund this university on the backs of our students through tuition dollars.
Right.
That's not viable either.
Not certain whether we wish we had a panel diverse or not, but essentially the Distinguished Millennium Panel distinguished resources, and they were pleased to be here and gave a great deal of accolades to having the resources that the universities able to bear in their work. Our perhaps more seasoned panel, maybe or maybe not taking a broader, different perspective, each of you have indicated the restrictions that the university has to meet its mission and do its work. So, not to ask you whether it has, you made it clear that maybe there's more resources that need to come. So, if you could take a statement to share with us the level of resources, both either in dollars or support, that you feel are restricting the greatest manifestation of the charter of the university.
Someone going to tackle that one?
I'll just start. I'm just going to nick away at it. It's a fabulous question, and I think people, the success of our faculty in research funding and the support for that has been outstanding, and exponential moves up the ranks of research universities. I think funding for teaching and classroom activity, and also for buildings. Those we have. A beautiful campus. Harder to get money for people and to keep that apace, and I mean that for all the staff and the infrastructure. So I would suggest that may be part of the lens difference in our conversations.
And I would add that we need resources to continue to move the university beyond the boundaries of Chapel Hill. I am deeply concerned about the poor quality of K-12 education. I firmly believe if we don't become more actively involved in K-12 education, sooner or later we won't have any customers. And to me, it becomes a form of enlightened self-interest to make sure that every kid that graduates from high school in North Carolina is qualified and eligible to go to a four-year institution. That's a competitiveness issue. That's not just a social or moral issue. And I don't think we need to sit on the sideline. That's what public university means to me. And I don't mean by moving beyond the walls of just doing the kind of research that we find interesting. I mean experimenting with innovative models of how you improve the outcome. We need an AHEC model for K-12 education in this state.
We've run out of time, I'm afraid, and I will hand it over now to Provost Jim Dean.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all very much for coming, and especially thank you to these three panelists and all of the three panelists. It's really actually rare, although we have the potential to do it, it's rare that you have this diversity of topics addressed in such a short period of time with this sort of group of people here to ask questions and these sort of experts here with or without beards, depending on how you look at the situation, to be able to answer them. And as a new provost, I get the question almost every hour. So what's it like? And one of the things I always say is the great thing about being here and the privilege of being provost is surrounded by the kind of quality of expertise that you see reflected on this panel and on the other two panels as well. So with that, we'll draw this program to a close. Thank you for coming. Thank you to this panel, some old friends here. And thank you to all the panelists. And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock on Polk Place. Thanks.